Hi, I'm Jeff Shropshire with Shropshire Insurance of Texas, and today we're going to be talking to our nonprofit and church friends out there in regards to their property and casualty insurance. Over the last few years, it's been quite difficult and quite expensive for nonprofits in general and churches in obtaining insurance here in Texas. Most of it's been weather driven, but the market shifted and we've seen some changes in pricing, of course, and it's become some real issues for people in affecting their budgets and also affecting their coverage. So Shropshire Insurance of Texas wanted to put together this video to help our nonprofits and churches out there. How in the world can you make yourself more competitive to appeal to an insurance carrier? How can we lower our prices with insurance carriers? And then also, how do we provide better coverage? So today we're going to spend just a moment talking about a few points that are really important that we're seeing in the industry. And the whole idea is that you take these tips, whether you're our client or not, it doesn't matter. Share this video with anybody and everybody because we want to help all nonprofits and churches out there in making sure they're protected first and then they have the best prices in place. So today we're going to talk about those topics, some things that you can do, some of them are risk management tools, and also things that you'll also want to tell your insurance companies about because they're going to help you save some money if you're doing all these things possible. So at first, I'd like to talk to you about commercial auto. For those of you who own vehicles, of course, taking care of the automobile is extremely important. Having a good maintenance program in place, and we have templates, and probably your agent does too, about regular taking care of the vehicle from the standpoints of checking tire pressure. Of course, you have to make sure everything is inspected, having the oil changes. A little tip that we've learned that we thought is really great to have inside of every owned vehicle in a nonprofit or a church would be to have two items: a fire extinguisher. Make sure it works. Make sure that you pull it out, it actually sprays something. Make sure it's updated. And then second, make sure you have an updated first aid kit. Those are really important. We found that you'll be using these vehicles on whether mission trips or transporting kids or adults in certain places, and invariably somebody has an accident or something happens and you need to maybe get a Band-Aid, apply something there. This is good to have both of those items in your vehicle. When you have your own vehicles, we got to make sure that our employees who are driving have good driving records. So you need to run your motor vehicle reports. Those are going to be important. The insurance carriers are going to ask you. You need to make sure you do it because the insurance companies, they have a choice if they want to run them or not. Sometimes you can't rely on them to do that, but it's always on your responsibility to make sure that anybody's driving that vehicle that has a good responsible record, and you need to keep those records as well. If your drivers are going to be driving the vehicle, your employees, and you're going to make sure that they might have kids or other people in the vehicle, run background checks on these folks as well too, through the national and state background checks. Of course, you're looking for anything that could trigger anything that shows any accliments towards abuse natures or anything like that, or any crimes that they may have committed, because you have a duty to make sure that any employee that you're putting around kids or even on the nonprofits with people with disabilities and those items, you have to make sure you put them in a safe environment. So running those and documenting those are very, very important. Now, a lot of you, instead of having your own auto, you're fortunate enough to have volunteers help you with transporting folks to kids or even adults to various activities. We see that a lot here at Shropshire Insurance of Texas with our churches. We see that in our nonprofits. And remember, nonprofits are considered our private schools out there. So there's a lot of parental environment in there where they're helping out and doing a lot of things. So what you need to do on those situations is you need to make sure your policy has hired and not owned coverage. Hired and not owned coverage is very important for the school, church, or nonprofit. It does not cover the liability of the individual's personal vehicle and the individual who's driving that car. But in case a claim came back towards the school, church, or nonprofit, you need to make sure you have that coverage in place, and your agent can help you with that. Then sometimes you're going to have with these volunteers, you got to make sure too that they have the same sort of requirements that you have for employees, especially if they're going to be around kids and maybe people with disabilities and things in their care. So you do need to run motor vehicle reports and you do need to run background checks for volunteer drivers. Now, I know that that drives people crazy, and some people are like, I've been here for 25 years, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter because you want to show everybody, especially if something comes up, you want to be able to show the insurance carrier and anybody else who might be looking at an accident that's occurred that you have taken care of due diligence of making sure that you've gone to every effort when you put that child, that adult in that vehicle with that driver, that you have done everything you can to make sure it's a safe environment. So we got to make sure they have good driving histories of volunteers. You got to make sure they have the background checks, and you need to verify that they have insurance. We have folks now going far enough in their nonprofits, churches, or private schools who are actually setting bars of what minimum limits of liability they're going to require a volunteer to have on their policy. They understand that that's the first line of defense. Not only is that good for the volunteer to make sure they have enough coverage to take care of an accident for people in their car, but it's also good for the church, the school, or the nonprofit as well. So those claims, if they come back under the hired non-owned coverage, you have a defense file to show what you've done and everything you've tried to do to put your people in a safe environment. Also, if you're going to have children in the vehicle, I like this rule. I like to have a rule of 2 adults who are not related by marriage or any other way, 2 adults in each vehicle. You know, the world has gotten a lot more, I don't know, educated. I don't know if even that's a good word for it, but a lot of people, regardless of their age, understand how things can be interpreted wrong, how false accusations as well as real accusations can really be a real problem. So if you're driving that vehicle and you've taken your time to put your car, your financial assets, your insurance, to donate your time and effort into these transportation of these kids or whatever, you need to be protected as well too, just in case one of the little critters in the back seat says they didn't like the joke that you said, or makes some sort of insinuation that something was said inappropriately on any other level. Having 2 adults in that vehicle who are not related, 1 can help maintain the level of energy in that vehicle, but 2, it also helps protect the adults in the car too from something that could be false or misunderstood. Again, you want to make sure with your volunteers that you take really good care of them because they're doing a great job for you, but we also need to make sure that we're having people in safe environments. Those are just a few things of your cars, your vehicles, taking care of that. That's really important. And the insurance carriers are getting real sticklers on asking those questions. So if you start implementing them right now, you're going to be ahead of the game when it comes to underwriting questions and marketing your insurance. And your agent will love you for it. Another topic we're going to talk about right now is liability. This is going to be the liability like general liability. And we're going to talk a little bit about abuse and molestation liability. These are things in this insurance world where there's kids involved that are going to be a big deal. Number 1, regardless if you have children or not in your business, you need to make sure your premises are safe. So scheduling regular walkthroughs, whether having an employee or having a board member, somebody on a regular basis, you get out, you get a little strides in, you get your steps in, and you walk the premise up and down basements and floors, and you go places even where nobody is because you're looking for hazards. You're looking for opportunities for mistakes. You're looking for things that need to be repaired, but you're looking for things that people could get hurt on the premise for. You're going to go out and you're going to inspect all that fun equipment you have outside, the playground equipment. Make sure all of those things are working. There's no sharp edges. Things are painted that need to be painted. Things work the way they're supposed to work. Bolts are tightened, all those good things. And then you're going to do a cool thing after you do a walkthrough. You're going to do a little documentation because we're going to need that if something happens and somebody says that's been broken for years. We need something to be able to say, no, we didn't know about it because everything's been walked through on this date and this date and this date. It's very, very important to have that documentation. Some people will do this. They'll have a contest with employees or they'll have it with volunteers and say, hey, take off. Go try to find as many things that you think we need to work on that could be a hazard for other people. Make it a challenge. Yes, some things that will come back may seem novice or stupid because somebody's trying to win the contest. But the reality is, if you can get more eyes affixed on looking for problems, you are going to mitigate a lot of potential claims. Not only claims of people getting hurt, but the claims that we'll talk about in a minute that could happen on the building. It's being aggressive on the front end of things. We don't want to be reactive. We want to be somebody who is proactive. And so having these on-site inspections are important, just like we talked about with your vehicles. Do it with every premise, every floor, every room. It's the best time you can do to make sure that you have found the things to provide the environment that you're supposed to. So then we have this child safety issue. It's a big issue still, always with any entity that serves children or has children on the premise. So child safety is very, very important. And that ranges anywhere from having child safety programs that are just in general safety mechanisms of diaper changing stations, how many people are there, how to do it, checking the rooms, making sure that the little caps are on the plugs, make sure no one can put their little fingers in places they shouldn't be. No one can get out and run around on their own and do certain things that they're missing, that everybody's accounted for, that you have check-in and check-out procedures, that we know who's there, we know who's watching them, and we know who they came with, and we know who we're sending them home with. That's a big deal because, man, some of you guys get so busy doing the end of class or doing the change of Sunday school or services, and it's hard to keep up with everything. But you got to slow down, evaluate your mechanisms, your check-in stations, how you do things. Make sure that everybody's trained properly and everybody's doing it. That's the key, is to make sure that everybody's doing it. Because sometimes you got that person, again, who's been there for 800 years and they've always done it this way. And everybody knows Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith is this, and Mr. Smith knows everything. But Mr. Smith needs to follow the exact same rules as the new rookie who just walked in to volunteer. Because if something goes wrong, as the business, as the church, or the nonprofit, they'll be looking to you to make sure that everybody was trained and following the same rules. So make sure that everybody is equalized in their training and their responsibilities. Now, when you come to children, it's always really important, as I mentioned, especially with the little ones, to have very good diaper changing procedures in place to make sure that there's no improper touch, there's no anybody hidden off to the side with the child for any false allegations that could be made. Again, you want to protect volunteers and employees as much as you want to protect that child. You should have policies and procedures in place for when children need to go to the restroom, how they're escorted to the restroom, and then the checking of making sure that the restroom is emptied from adults when the children go in. It's a great way to do that, to make sure, again, that if no child is in a potential situation of being around a bad adult or a false allegation, you've eliminated that. So make sure you go over the rules on that, taking kids and back and forth to restrooms. Also, it's a great recommendation. We're seeing this a lot with a lot of underwriting requirements that I think makes a lot of sense. And with the churches that we have doing it, they love it. It makes sense. But to have a 6-month waiting period for any member or new member who comes into the church, have a waiting period of 6 months before they can serve in children's ministries. And I know that's difficult because we have people who come in, or we have volunteers who come to nonprofits, and man, they just feel like they're called to work with children. That's what they're supposed to do. And that is wonderful because you need them, and we need them helping us in those facilities. However, on a dark side, again, I deal in the dark world some, by having such readily available opportunities for volunteers to work with children can attract some deviant behavior from those who are trying to harm children. And so by having this set policy in place, the studies have found that 6 months is a very long time for somebody who may have a mischievous or unholy activity desires with children to wait before they can be around children. And that sounds really kind of sick, but it's true. So therefore, by having that policy in place, you have helped eliminate quick entries into your children's program and possibly putting people in danger. And you can have an easy discussion with those volunteers who want to, and you might have to tell them they have to wait a little bit and they get upset, and you just tell them, listen, here's the deal. It's the insurance company guy's fault. Blame it on us insurance people. We're fine with that, because I would much rather you blame them on me than to have a child go through, or a family or your church go through some horrendous event. We don't want any of that. Blame your agent if they're telling you to do that. That is just fine. Blame the insurance company. We'd all be fine with that too. But the idea is protecting children. And somebody who wants to do those things can serve in your church or your nonprofit in other areas not involving children until that 6 months is up. And then it gives you time to get to know people and you can kind of test them out and see if that really does fit their niche. Because not everybody is, of course, malicious. We don't treat everybody as a suspect, but we have to have levels of thresholds to where we make people be afforded the opportunity to be in the vicinity with children or people with disabilities who cannot take care of all their own needs. Very, very big things. And we're finding that the insurance carriers are asking a lot more questions now because liability claims have gone up. Things are more expensive, but the underwriting is tightening, and you're finding that some limits that you may have had in this area are not found anymore. Or you have to really boost up your levels of practices to make sure that you've got everybody in line before an insurance carrier will put more dollars of limits onto your policy. So review your handbooks. You should have in your handbook rules for employees. You should have those rules for volunteers. And all these procedures in place that we just talked about need to be in there. They need to be distributed to people. Some churches will have an employee handbook, or in nonprofits too, an employee handbook for employees, and they'll even have an employee handbook for volunteers. I know we have a sample one like that people can go through and add to and cross out. But everybody who's involved in the organization should be under some handbook, and they should be afforded that handbook. They should be able to sign off that they've read and looked at that handbook. It's very important. Then also, a lot of questions we're asking too when it comes to this liability situation is in the world of directors and officers liability. We get a lot of questions now about the structure of these organizations, who's on the board, how are boards elected, how are other committees elected? Is there a formal process, or is there just a group of people going, well, Teddy's a nice guy. Teddy can serve on every committee he wants. Teddy can serve as long as he wants to. We don't really care because Teddy's a good guy in the community. Well, Teddy may be a good guy in the community, but you need to have some formal processes in place, and usually term limits and things like that apply as these boards rotate off. It helps from a liability situation for the board member that volunteers given the time, and it helps the organizations in building defenses in case allegations are made improperly. So I'm just going to tell you, you just need to evaluate that. The carriers are asking a lot of questions. Where do these board members come from? Who chooses them and how long? Those are good questions to ask because they come to place from a liability standpoint. You could talk about liability all day long, but you need to have these discussions with your agent because there's other things too that I'm sure that you should need to discuss, but we're hitting the highlights. And so the next topic is a big one, and most of you are really familiar with it here in Texas, is the property insurance. Oh my gosh, has property insurance gone crazy? We have seen premiums go nuts. We have seen deductibles go nuts. We've seen coverage decreased. This is nothing that an insurance agent wants to be able to have to provide to their client because none of that is good news, but it's driven by market factors and other things outside of your agent's ability. But the idea is to work with your agent to help them help you. And in doing so, by doing that, property insurance is one way to do it. We already talked about inspections of the property for liability. Well, tell them to do the same thing. Look for water stains, feel around the light switches and panels, see if there's any warmth anywhere, see if you smell anything, walk around, take a little time. Those proactive measures are very important. I think it's good because the carriers always are going to ask you, when did you update your plumbing? When did you update your heating and air conditioning? When did you update electrical? When did you update that roof up there? Well, you're going to need to get some professionals on the premise to do some inspections. Have a plumber out to inspect your plumbing. See where there's fixtures that may be rusted out or corroded that need to be fixed. Have your electrician come out and look at the panels. Have them come out and address the issues and the questions of either hot plugs or things that aren't working. Get them repaired. You know, those are really, really, really important. Typically, the heating and air systems are taken care of because when the air conditioner goes out, people are screaming. If the heater goes out, people are screaming. But man, these other things are hidden disasters that are waiting to happen that the insurance companies do not want to happen. Next to a hailstorm or tornado, fire is the scary thing for every carrier. And if they're going to think that you've got old wires, bad panels, you're not going to get good insurance. You're just not. And the premium that you're going to pay is going to be for less coverage. That's not what any insurance agent wants to get. So you make sure that those are updated. Roofs are very, very important. I think it's good to have a roof inspection every year. That doesn't mean you have a roof claim. That means to get them up there, and if they see some things that need to be tacked down, they see some vents that need to be fixed, this and that. I personally, even at my little dinky insurance agency, I have a roofing company come out every year, inspect it. I have a TPO roof. They'll patch here and there. They'll fix things here and there. I spend a little money every year to make sure that water doesn't come into this building. I'm not looking for a claim. I'm looking for regular maintenance. And that's what the insurance companies are looking for too. Regular maintenance on those areas. Plumbing, heating, air, and roof. And if it's too old and too outdated, they're going to expect some updates before they put out the best coverage for that. May not seem fair all the time because I know nonprofits and churches really always want to focus all their money to those ministries or to those activities, and I get it. But the building is important from a safety standpoint. If you don't have the building, you can't do the ministries, you can't do those other things. So you need to, they all go together, and you need to just buy into it and put monies aside and set up a structure to where you take care of these things. And then you share all that information with your insurance agent because they're looking for ways to put on those applications credits and opportunities for better coverage. That's what you need, credits and opportunities for better coverage. And that only comes from you. The agent cannot make those things up. We can't do guesstimates. You got to do it, and then you got to show us. Document all those things that you do, whether you have the air conditioning, heating, plumbing, roof. Keep it in a file. We're going to talk a little bit more about documentation in a second, but you've got to be able to prove that up to get the best pricing. And that's just the way the world is today, and it's very difficult. You need to check your smoke detectors, whether they're electrical or whether they're battery. Make sure they're all working. Same for your carbon monoxide detectors. Check them whether they're battery or not. Make sure they're working. Make sure your fire extinguishers have been checked and pressurized and have been checked off every year. These are things, and that they're actually distributed where people know where they are. There's nothing like it when somebody puts the freaking fire extinguisher in a cabinet that no one knows it's in a cabinet. It needs to be available. It needs to be ready. If you have a kitchen, you need to get those Ansel systems, make sure that they're on a maintenance program and that they're being taken care of. Your hood vents are cleaned out. If you're cooking in there, there is just normal stuff. You would do it at home that you've got to do at your church or your nonprofit because the carriers are looking for that. And you do not want to have a fire. You do not want people to get hurt. And if you did have an accident, you want to be able to mitigate it quickly. And those are the ways to do it. But you can't let it go because they're going to find out. We have insurance companies now that are doing a ton of on-site inspections. Do not fill an application out and just go, this will make them happy. Absolutely not, because they're coming. They're coming out to walk the premise, and they're going to look for the exact same that we just talked about. So be proactive, have them done, get the credits. Then when these folks walk in, they go, oh my gosh, this is like a fantastic church. Oh my gosh, this is a fantastic nonprofit. We want to insure this place forever. And therefore, you're looking at maybe a long-term agreement with a carrier who buys in to your business. And that's what we all need. Now let's move on to a couple of issues that aren't really structurally related, but some things to think about. Premiums have gone up so much, especially in property. And right now, I'm only talking about property that you own. Okay, this is not other people's property, your own property. You need to be thinking in terms of claims of when something breaks, somebody throws a rock through the window, you maybe have a little dip in the roof of something with a little water come in, an air conditioner leaks, does these sorts of things. A little water comes out of the plumbing, doesn't flood everything out, but it's caused a mess. It's going to cost a few hundred, maybe even a few $1,000s. But I want you to consider on the property that you own, absorbing and paying for as many of the little frivolous stuff that you can. One, the insurance premiums have gotten so high and your deductibles have raised, it's naturally going to push that to happen anyway. But as any agent would say, you'd like to keep your losses as clean as possible and save those property losses, the property that you own, save those property losses for disasters, big time things that no one wants to pay any money to have this stuff fixed. But I'm going to tell you, you sit there and sometimes you spend $5,000 out of your own pocket pocket to get a little plumbing thing fixed instead of turning it into the insurance company, you're going to save yourself thousands of dollars in premium. Now, if you're not sure, you can call your agent and tell them the type of event that you've had on your own property and let them guide you and give you the ideas of, yeah, maybe you should take care of that yourself. And if they're like, we can't take care of it, then discuss what it is to turn in a claim. Now, when you have a situation where you injure somebody else or you've broken somebody else's property, always call your agent. Those are things you cannot necessarily control, and you should have consultation with your agent about turning in claims and notifications because your policy has those conditions in place, and you don't want to violate any of those things to where if something comes back around where somebody says, you hurt me or you broke my stuff, that you give the insurance carrier the time to go, I'm sorry you didn't tell us timely enough. Call your agent and discuss those things. The final bit of our talk today that I like to talk to you about is documentation. And I've touched on it lightly a little bit. But when you're dealing in nonprofits, and I'll use churches as an example, where you have rotating boards many of the times, it has been difficult for many of our clients, and I know it is for many of you out there, but just because of the nature and the structure of your church's organization chart. When you have rotating boards and all these things that happen, it has been difficult to find information about when things have either been updated or replaced. Typically, we find people who are running back to try to find the one member who they always make fix the air conditioner or fix the plumbing or who was in charge of when the roofer came out and all those things. And then that he or she is gone or that he or she has passed away. And with them was all their knowledge and all the stuff. Do yourself a service for now and for the church members 7 to 10 years from now. Every time you have something worked on the church, everything you do for fix a liability situation, every repair, every inspection, everything that you do needs to be filed and saved in a place that can be readily found by people 5 to 7 years from now. Don't tie this to one person. Don't tie this to one pastor or one director. Multiple people need to know where this file of information is. It's critical that your insurance agent and the carriers have this information. One, to even get you the coverage you need, but two, to get you good pricing that you can even afford. This is the sort of stuff that has really been a real funnel blocker for a lot of people that we're working with now because they just can't find the information that they need and they're desperate for coverage or for savings. So do everybody in your church or nonprofit a favor. Get organized with your material. Share the information throughout the management structure where more than one person knows, and you'll find that this tip will save you a lot. Listen, we're very pleased and glad to give this information to you, whether it's your church, your nonprofit, or your private school. You can take this video, share it with as many people as you want. We would love just to help as many people as we can by giving out this information. When it comes to the insurance, if you'd like a second review of eyes or you need somebody to help you, you can always call Shropshire Insurance of Texas. But regardless of that, we hope that you have a great, successful year with your nonprofit and church. And if we can help you anyway, don't hesitate to give us a call. Thank you and have a blessed day.